Welcome to Technovation. I'm your host, Peter High. My guest today is Shawn Bice. Shawn is the president of products and technology at Splunk, the nearly $2.5 billion revenue software company that helps companies turn data into doing. In his role, Shawn has overall responsibility for product, engineering, design, architecture, CTO, CIO, and CISO functions. Shawn's also a board member at WaFd Bank in Seattle, and prior to his time at Splunk, he was the vice president of databases at Amazon Web Services. Shawn, welcome to Technovation. It's great to speak with you today.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Well, I thought we might begin in a logical place, which is your company, Splunk. I mentioned a little bit about the organization, though. Why don't you take a quick moment, if you wouldn't mind, to provide a bit more context? Describe Splunk's business for our listeners, please.
Yeah, sure. So a lot of companies in the world, they're trying to reinvent themselves. They're trying to do as much as they can with data so that they can deliver the best experiences to their customers. They want to operate these businesses as efficiently as they can. And then, of course, they want to keep those businesses secure. So those are Splunk's customers. So when you think of Splunk, we like to talk about turning data into doing, which is a fantastic place to be. But at the end of the day, if you're looking to really streamline all your technical operations, really understand how your applications are performing, pinpoint those problems before they become problems, resolve them, keep the environment secure, that's Splunk.
A great overview. Thank you, Shawn. And I mentioned you're the president of products and technology. Again, I gave a bit of an overview of what's within your purview, but maybe you could take another moment and provide an additional thumbnail sketch as to that purview, if you would.
Yeah. Our team is doing quite a bit for the company. So a big portion of my team are the folks that are actually building all the products that our customers are procuring. So, that includes product management as well as engineering. A really, really great, innovative, fast-moving group. So when you think of Splunk on-prem, Splunk in the cloud, all those features that are getting built, that's them. And then, of course, the CISO function, as well as our IT group and a few others, all make up products and technologies at Splunk.
So you have both internal capabilities as well as naturally with the product, some of the most important aspects of the customer-facing areas of the organization as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And what is really, really interesting about it is having our security team using our own products. And, so it's great when you have a customer right there in your backyard, so to speak, that can pressure test new things, give you real feedback, put it into play early. So it really works out well for us and our customers.
You alluded to the cloud, and certainly a broad topic that is on the minds and in the game plans of most technologists today. However, the ways in which they are leveraging it might be different company by company. And I know that you're a believer in a sort of multi-cloud hybrid approach to the future. Talk a bit about the rationale behind that and why you think that's a powerful recipe to success.
Yeah, well, I know there's a lot of discussion in the world about going all in on a cloud, but I think the reality of that, I kind of think history does inform what we do today and tomorrow. And, historically, I don't know that too many enterprises were all in on any one thing, let it be an Oracle database or a SQL or Windows or Linux. I think most IT organizations are going to try to stay modern. They're going to look at as many technologies as they need to keep those businesses growing. And I don't know that that's just going to be one thing. So with that, I think that same frame applies to the cloud. And most enterprises that I talk to, what I hear is, if they have $100 to spend, they may spend 70 of those dollars with one cloud provider, but they're going to spend the rest with others. That could be cherry picking best of breed services. It could be having leverage at negotiation time, but I see that often. And then there's still a lot of enterprises that have on-premise footprints. And while those on-premise footprints are getting smaller, sometimes there's applications like a mainframe app that they can't move, and they need that mainframe to still work with something under a certain latency profile. So at the end of the day, I think what that means is it's going to be a pretty common practice for a lot of enterprises to have applications in multiple clouds, including their on-premise environment that just gets smaller.
I want to thank you for that overview. Very interesting. And obviously an area you've played, having previously been at Amazon Web Services, you've thought about cloud in a variety of different rationales and formats, given the places that you have been at Microsoft also before that as well. So you've worked for a couple of other key cloud players before joining this organization. I also wanted to talk to you a bit about the importance of consistent security and observability. These are really important aspects of what a chief information officer or a tech and digital leader must bear in mind today when thinking about a shared data platform. Talk a bit about your rationale there as well.
Yeah, well, so that question right there, man, you could unpack a lot. I actually think you're asking an awesome, because if you get this wrong, you could be in a spot you don't want to be in. But I'll start with security first. I can't imagine any business or tech leader ever coming up to me saying, "Hey, we've got some applications in Amazon and little couple in Google. We have some in Azure, and we have some on premise. And you know what we want? We want a different security tool for each thing." I can't imagine anybody saying that that's what they want. Instead, a lot of these tech leaders fundamentally say, look, yeah, of course, I have data in places that it needs to be, and I want a consistent security experience across the whole. And that's where Splunk customers are really thriving. We don't think about hey, we're going to build a security solution and it only will work in this one. We recognize that customers are going to obviously have data in multiple cloud environments as well as on-prem, and we want to give them a security solution that works across the board. So it just makes it easier. Like your administrators or security professionals now have a tool set that they're familiar with and works. With that, then I would transition over to observability. And this one is a little more nuanced in the sense that, frankly, the way these new applications are built, they look different than the way apps were built 10, 15 years ago. And the way I would put it is, Peter, if you and I were building an app 15, 20 years ago, we'd probably have a database, an app server, some clients that connect to it, and we would probably scale up the back end and off you'd go. But the way people build applications today just looks different. Why? Well, because the cloud is here. So, if you were building a rideshare app and you and I were like, hey, are we going to have one user or 100 million users? I don't know. You wouldn't know. But the system needs to scale instantly. And that's what the cloud enables. So this is why you hear people using microservices. They take a big app, break it into smaller parts, pick the right tool for the right job. Now, imagine something like Netflix having all these little microservices behind it. There's no human being that's going to be able to reason all of these events and microservices. It's just not possible. That's why tools in the observability space now matter a lot. Why? Because these tools do understand all of those components and what relates to what, and then the tools are observing that environment. So if there's a hiccup in a system, it can tell you, hey, here's the problem, why it's happening, how to resolve it, or even better, hey, I'm detecting that a problem is going to occur here. Here's how we can get ahead and prevent it. So when you're thinking security and observability, that really is Splunk's bread and butter. And, what I was just walked you through is why those two things matter more today than ever before.
You make a compelling case, to be sure. Let's stick with security for a second. There are those who say that security is in some ways the antithesis to innovation. If innovation is about risk taking, security is about risk mitigation. But I know that you believe that security is a necessary ingredient, a foundation for innovation itself. So perhaps turning that logic a bit on its head. Talk a little bit about your observations and thoughts around that, please.
Yeah, sure. So, I often think back to software projects in the past. And, I think anybody who's built a large application would tell you security is not something that you can just bolt on. Like, it just doesn't work well that way. It's something that you have to think about very early, and it becomes part of your architecture. So when you think about security like that, I definitely get what you just said. Like sometimes it can sort of come across like, hey, here's all the reasons why we can't do something. But I will tell you this, the best security solutions that I've seen, the mental model is not one layer of security. It's about having multiple layers. And, I think most people have this attitude like, look, at some point, somebody is going to break into something. But when they do, we want to minimize that blast rate. We want it to detect it. We want to prevent it, but it's all about minimizing the blast radius. So that's why you see a lot of companies putting in multiple layers of security, so that you can minimize that exposure. But the folks that actually do have multiple layers in, and then more importantly, they have the right tooling to detect something and be able to prevent it, where that becomes very easy. Those companies basically all of a sudden are moving hyper fast. Like when you think of a lot of these, like COVID basically turned the world on its head. And I've seen enterprises move faster than ever before. And it's not like people are building things less secure. They're actually building these whole new experiences that are more secure. They have more features than ever before, but it's because they've really thought about security up front. It's part of the core architecture.
Yeah, very interesting. W. Edwards Deming said, "In God we trust, all others bring data." Data becomes a really, and that was something said many decades ago as an executive and a thinker who passed away long ago. If anything, the sanctity and importance and power, frankly, of not only harnessing data but doing so in a way as quickly as possible to gain insight becomes all the more of a differentiator between leader and laggard. And I wondered, as a leader within an organization that spends so much time in thinking about this, talk a bit about the ways in which data empowers technology teams to reach the right conclusions, to draw in the rest of the organization to do special things. Talk a bit about some of your perspectives there.
Yeah, the first thing that I would say, I'll give you three fun customer examples of what they do with data. But before that, what I would say is there are a number of customers today that are thriving, and there are some that are not. And the ones that are not, they actually don't have a strong data foundation, and sometimes people ask me like, hey, what does that mean when you don't have a strong data foundation? It's usually whenever you're trying to do something with data, you're told, no, can't do it. Hey, we'd like to do a recommendation. No, our system doesn't do it. Or, we would like to join this data with this data to help us ask this or answer this question. Sorry, can't do it. The folks that are thriving, they're the ones that are just building super fast, and they hear yes a lot. So they're using the right tool for the right job. But frankly, if you have that strong data foundation, you hear the words yes a lot. Now, what are people doing with data? University of Illinois is a fun one. All these like I have two boys in college. I think about COVID and their safety, and the University of Illinois is doing a really, really interesting thing where they literally are doing contact tracing across campus to keep it safe for all those students. So, imagine they're tracking everybody who's coming in and out of buildings, what classrooms they're in, and so on and so forth, so that if something is detected, they know exactly how to constrain that. And it's all based on data. It's happening right now. Like if you think about it, in the past, a lot of people would think of data as a record of what happened in the past. Like how many people went into that classroom last year? That's what I mean by a record of the past versus data turning something into doing is, hey, somebody just came up positive on COVID. Show me all the students that were around that person in the past 24 hours. Boom. That's turning data into doing. Another interesting one is think of the scale of Walmart. You're talking over 200 million shoppers coming in and out of those systems, and Walmart is using Splunk to maintain that observability and make sure that environment is running and make sure that it's secure. So it's awesome. And then you think of something like Formula One, which is, if you love cars, Formula One is a great example of an enterprise that's been around for a long time, but those cars, they literally can win or lose on the blink of an eye. And those cars are emitting data all the way around the track. They're collecting terabytes of data. And then what they do is send that all the way back to these teams like McLaren, for example, has close to 800 engineers that are actually looking at that data during a race, making adjustments literally on the fly. They're trying to literally gain milliseconds to win races. And that's all teams. So the McLaren guys have literally changed their entire trajectory just on how they're using data. So those are three simple examples of what I see people doing. And there are many more stories in there.
That's really interesting. You mentioned earlier that in many ways, you are your own best customer, your first customer, if you will, the extent to which your own team is using Splunk's solutions. It strikes me you've got a really interesting sort of 360-degree lens to how you do things. As I mentioned earlier, and as you went on to articulate in greater detail, you have an IT organization, for instance, that reports through to you. Likewise, many of your customers are IT departments of major organizations. And I wonder, in running an IT organization, as well as in working with key partners, customers who are themselves also IT leaders, what you're seeing is sort of like emerging best practices from across this realm. Forgive a rather general question, as I know that your customers run the gamut across a wide array of industries. But it is certainly a discipline that's on the ascent and becoming, if anything, especially due to COVID, all the more strategic. And the pace of digital transformation, to use a very broad term, is accelerating tremendously as well. Talk a bit, as somebody who's been in the IT space as a leader for quite some time, talk about the evolution of the IT leader, the CIO, and his or her teams as you see it now.
Yeah. Well, you just said it a few times: acceleration, speed, acceleration. Frankly, if I could tell you some long story right now, but if I were to sum it up, it's about speed and moving faster than ever before. I've been in the industry now for almost 30 years. And, frankly, I grew up in an era where projects would take a year or two. Anything you were trying to do, it was always a year or two. But what used to take a year or two, I see companies pull this off in a month or two. It's crazy. And I think COVID, if there's any lemonade in COVID, this would be one example of it, where people have had to learn how to move so fast to build new experiences so fast, or you're out of business. So the good news is, I think business leaders know today, there's no question that technology is mandatory, no question at all. And then with that as a backdrop, then how are some people doing better than others? And I think you slipped those words in there too. They're innovating. They're embracing new technology. I always like to say this, don't let familiarity become a blind spot that stifles innovation. And what I mean by that is, it'd be like you and I being in a shop saying, hey, this is how we've always done things. It's always worked like this for the past 10, 15, 20 years. And while that is a good thing from an experience standpoint, what it could do is become a blind spot if you're just refusing to look at different ways of doing things. And, the shops that I've seen literally transform themselves are the ones that they look like a software company in some sense. They are embracing new technology. They're finding change agents. They're building apps at record speeds. And they're just hustling and moving fast, embracing technology. That's what I really see today. Those are the shops that are making a huge, huge impact in their businesses.
Another thing that's very clear throughout your responses is just the Splunk operates obviously in a broader ecosystem of technology. And today, if you look at the CIO's role or the digital and technology leader's role, whatever title he or she might have, it is an ecosystem that they must marshal in order to do all that they do. I wonder how you think about that. How do you think about the way in which Splunk plays within the broader ecosystem of technology, especially someone, as I mentioned earlier, who's worked for several now leading organizations within the tech space? How do you think about that ecosystem perspective?
Yeah. Oh man, that's another really important thing to get right. So What a lot of cloud providers are trying to do is offer their unique differentiation. So that they may build a service, like Microsoft might build a service that is unique to Microsoft in the Azure cloud. Like Office 365 would be a good example of that. They got a lot of productivity workers on it. There's a lot of things they can actually do with their own tech that's unique to Microsoft and Azure. Same is true with Google. If you look at BigQuery, a lot of their ML services, they're trying to build a more sovereign cloud. That's sort of their uniqueness, if you will, in Google. And then, of course, I worked at Amazon. So Amazon is building a lot of unique things, let it be something like DynamoDB or Aurora, that you can only find those data management systems, or Redshift as an analytics system in AWS. So if you think of all of these cloud providers doing something unique, when it comes to observability and security, it's important that those tools cross-cut. So the way we think about it is, it's not about building something unique for one cloud. It's about recognizing our customers will have data in all of these clouds. So when we build, we need to build with the mindset that it's about providing security across multiple clouds, including on-premise, or for observability, it's about operating across multiple clouds. So that's how we think of the problem. And I just net it out to, when you have things that cross-cut, when that CIO or that business leader says, listen, I need a consistent way to observe, or a consistent way to make sure my environment's secure, that's where Splunk customers are really successful in how we think about those tools.
Good. I wanted to ask you a quick question about trends. We've talked already about a number of important trends, be it a variety of things related to data and analytics, the evolution of the cloud, security and observability, which you reemphasized a moment ago. What other trends, as you look to the future, Shawn, particularly excite you?
Yeah, there are a ton, but I have to tell you, the edge is something that is really, I think the edge is going to be transformational. Like, why would I think that? And here's some of the trends that I notice. So, I pay attention to like I'm sure we both have, the latest and greatest mobile phone in our pocket. A lot of these things, Verizon, AT&T, they're all connecting 5G. A lot of 5G is supposed to turn on here in the month of January, with the exception of certain states that are still anxious around airports. But 5G is going to basically make your phone feel like your desktop when it was connected to, a gig-e Ethernet connection, like you never even thought of bandwidth. And imagine the type of applications you'll be able to build when your mobile device can process and move that much data. It's crazy. Then when you look at what the big cloud providers are doing, like Google, Microsoft, Amazon, they're all investing in edge. And then you look at the telcos like AT&T, Verizon, and others, they're now also investing in edge and making sort of the edge of their networks now available to customers. So when I see trends like that, 5G, major cloud providers investing in edge, telcos themselves offering edge, that tells me something big is about to happen there. And really, I believe edge is really going to become part of the de facto architecture for many enterprises. It's not going to be a niche thing. It will just be part of your architecture. There are more customers I meet today. I don't know, take a utility company. They're going to want to do computation right at the meter, not send all data up to cloud, process it, make decision. Or if you and I built an autonomous car, like every time I turn around, there's a new EV coming out, it's trying to drive itself. Those cars need to make decisions on the road. That's a great example of data being created right at the edge. And there's some type of computation you'll need to do there. So with that, I wouldn't be surprised. I think the edge is growing faster than a lot of people realize, but I really think that is going to become a key part of enterprise architectures, and it's going to unlock applications unlike we've ever seen before.
Well, Shawn Bice, thank you so much for joining us today. What a fascinating conversation covering a wide array of aspects that not only are representative of your own thought process, but obviously what you're bringing to life as a leader at Splunk. It's been a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Peter. I really enjoyed it.